Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything classes 5A all the way down to 1A D2 in District 3 each and every week. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by our District 3 expert, Logan Green. LG, what's shaking?
Oh, Brandon, you know what? Just living the life here. Just living life.
Friendly. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I'm rocking my Melba shirt today. With after their big win against Elko. You know, if your school has a store that opens, let me know. I would love to buy something from your school. Just let me know. Just let me know when it's open, and I'll come support you guys. So just keep me posted, everybody.
Logan loves wearing the swag, wearing the merchandise. So, yes, I know certain schools have their apparel stores open for just limited amounts of time. So, if you want to see Logan's Melba Mustang shirt, you can watch the video version of this Prepcast at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. You can also listen audio only at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. Let's dive right into it. We had a full week 1 of football action. Volleyball got started, soccer, cross country, golf, swimming. It's all off and running. The biggest story from the Treasure Valley this past week, 10 days, is the football team over at Fruitland. They played a really entertaining ball game with Columbia on Friday night and lost in the final minute. We'll talk about that in just a second, but they made a coaching change. Now they had made a coaching change in the off season as well, right? Ryan Tracy, the longtime head coach, retired. They brought in Dane Cook, who a way long time ago coached in Idaho, and then he had been coaching out of state. He came back, was leading the team through fall camp, and then all of a sudden for their game Friday night, it was actually Jordan Gross, one of the most heralded players, athletes in Idaho history, former NFL offensive lineman with the Carolina Panthers, played college ball at Utah, and he had been an assistant coach the past couple of years, but he is now the head coach for Fruitland. So everyone was kind of going, what happened here? I thought Dane Cook was the head coach. So this was something that we didn't really find out until Friday night when Coach Gross Fruitland people knew, but nobody else knew until Friday night when Coach Gross was leading the team against Columbia.
Yeah, just kind of a crazy story. I mean, and different things float around that aren't correct and accurate. And I think, Brandon, you have the inside scoop, so to say, on what happened, right?
Yes. So before we hopped on the Prepcast today, I wanted to kind of find out what was going on at Fruitland. So I reached out to Mark V-Dub Van Weerdhuizen, the athletic director at Fruitland. He's also the boys basketball coach. And I said, hey, we're getting a lot of questions about, what's going on with the Fruitland football team and the coaching change that was made. And, I just kind of want to nip it in the bud before these wild, out of control rumors and conjecture and all this stuff takes off. And so he actually gave me a call right before we hopped on to do the Prepcast, Logan. And he told me it's nothing controversial. It's nothing bad. In fact, Dane Cook, who was the head coach, is still on the staff as the defensive coordinator. He's just an assistant coach now. He's still a teacher at Fruitland High School. So it's not like he left. He's still there at Fruitland. Basically what it came down to was being a head coach is a lot of responsibility. When you're an assistant coach, you go to practice and you coach the team. When you're the head coach, there's a lot of administrative stuff you're in charge of, right? You got to make sure everyone's got their uniforms and travel and all that extra stuff that Coach Cook just didn't have the time for. And so they all got together and it was a mutual decision. Jordan Gross says, I've got the time to be able to do that head coach administrative type stuff. So they just made a switch. Jordan Gross is now the head coach. Dane Cook is still on staff as an assistant coach and the defensive coordinator. And that's really all there is to it. There's really nothing to see here, folks, as they like to say.
Right.
So I know Mark was very appreciative that we reached out. He told me that we were the only people that reached out to him to try and find out what was going on. And this is why we do it, right? We want to make sure that people get the facts. And if there's nothing to see here, then there's nothing to see here.
Yeah. So, like you said, really just kind of a non-story, just a change in personnel. It sounds like everything is intact, which I think is great, right? So if those kids on the team went through, fall camp with, Coach Cook there, it's not like he's gone forever and they can't lean on what they, learned from him during the summer or workouts, whatever it was. He's still there. And then now you throw in Jordan Gross, who has incredible experience. I mean, he played for the best team in the NFL, like hands down, the best team in the NFL. I mean, that's not even a conjecture. It's truth that the Panthers are the best. I mean, you can think what you want, Brandon, but I'm here to tell you facts. I'm just kidding. But now, I mean, that, it's an exciting time, like, right, for our area. Now you've got a 2A school in Marsing that has an ex-NFL player as a coach. Now you have Jordan Gross as an ex-NFL player as a coach. We're getting some great football minds here in the Treasure Valley to coach these kids. And it's only going to make everybody get better, right? It's going to improve football. It's going to, they can bring in all the things that they've seen that high-level guys have done, right? Jordan Gross can come into his wide receiver and say, "Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you this thing that Steve Smith used to do." Like, it's just awesome. I think it's great, that he can offer those things, and that it sounds like Fruitland has found maybe the answer there, which is good for them. I know that there's obviously some issues in the past, and so hopefully those are gone and behind them, and now Jordan Gross is here to reign in a new era.
Yeah, it really does feel like a fresh start and kind of a clean slate for Fruitland. And Fruitland's always good. They're always competitive.
Yeah.
That never went away. So just a little bit different leadership now. And so let's dive into the game they had on Friday night. They played Columbia 4A versus a 3A. This was actually a really good game, back and forth battle. Columbia gets the game-winning touchdown with just over a minute, maybe just less than a minute to go. But it was decided in the final minute and change. Ika Ho scores the game-winning touchdown with less than a minute to go. And overall, Ho had a day on the ground, Logan. He rushed for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game winner for the Wildcats, which has a new head coach as well in Charlie Dotson. So he starts 1-0 in Columbia.
Yeah, that's a huge win for Columbia because that's not a bad Fruitland team, right? That's a Fruitland team that was probably going to the playoffs last year. They were going to play in that Kansas City playoff with Payette and McCall, and due to some things, they backed out of it. But they were a playoff team the year before. I mean, Fruitland's a good team, and to beat them, I mean, I think that's honestly, I would read more into it from Columbia's side of things. That says maybe Columbia is not as bad as we first thought, and and they're playing with Fruitland, and incredible game by Ho on the ground with what'd you say? It was 232 yards, I believe, right? Something like
236.
236.
Don't shortchange him.
For anybody to do that, I don't care who you're playing. I mean, that's 2 trips up and down the field and almost half of another. Like, that is an incredible performance to be able to do that, to stay up, and great job by that offensive line from Columbia as well to block for him and get that done. But yeah, just a great start for Columbia to get off 1-0.
Yeah, it's an exciting win for the Wildcats. And for Fruitland, they had no shame in dropping a 17-12 ball game to a 4A program. The other notable 3A game that happened, Logan, was actually a game that you were on the call for at IdahoSports.com. You were in Weiser as the defending 3A champions started their season with a shutout over Buell, a rematch of the first round playoff game from a year ago, and Weiser won that game 24-0.
Yeah, and you know what? It was only 7-0 at halftime in favor of Weiser. And here's the thing, Brandon, I just don't, at least, and all the Weiser people out there can correct me if I'm wrong, I just don't think they really played their hand like they could have. I just think that my thought was, you know what, it's Buell's a good squad, but we should be I felt like Weiser could have run them out by more if they really, I think they were testing some things out, holding things close to the vest, right? You have an incredibly tough conference. You have Homedale, who just blew out a California team, just ran all over them. You have Fruitland, who is always in the mix. You have McCall Donnelly, who's been in the mix. And you know what? You don't want to show all your cards right here at the beginning. And that's just the kind of the vibe I got, that they were trying to figure it out. They ran a couple of different running backs back there to try and figure out who was going to step in, who was going to be here. Willie Shirts is gone. Brett Spencer's gone. Who's going to fill these shoes? And they had an opportunity to kind of play around with it, right? And figure out what they wanted and it really never was in question. They controlled the ball. The defense, phenomenal. Buell drove close once, and it was at the end of the first half, and they ran out of time. They just didn't have time. They got sacked on a play with about 15 seconds left and never snapped the ball again. And then that was it. They never really got close to threatening ever. The defense, very good from Weiser. And so it's going to be tough to play on that defense. And then the offense, Andrew Enders took over at quarterback, and he really didn't have to do a ton. They kept the ball on the ground. I didn't think they asked a lot of him in that game. And, there were a couple of hiccups, some fumbles early on, but is week one, right? You're going to get those things out of your system. And I really liked what I saw from Weiser. Like I said, they played a pretty conservative game and still shut a team out 24-0.
And a good Buell team, team that got better.
Yeah. And I think that, they looked really good. Weiser did. And I think that they're going to look better when they play different team. When they play a Homedale, they're going to bust out more than we saw from them in that opening game.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew Enders was the IdahoSports.com player of the game, threw a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and Homedale didn't have a game, Logan. So they could have been at the Weiser game. They could have been somewhere else. Who knows? But maybe that plays into
That's a good point, Brandon.
Yeah. You never know, right? So that's kind of what happened at the 3A level. Let's go to the 4A, where Columbia started 1-0, which was great to see from them. You had, in terms of 4A games, I think the biggest one that jumped out to me was the Thursday night game at Donna Larson Park, where Bishop Kelly just rolled past 5A Capital 41-7. It was the first time the two schools had ever played. And BK really flexed some serious muscle.
Right. And it's crazy that those two have never played because they're not that far apart, but
right.
I know the only thing I can say is Bishop Kelly, did, a lot of people like Skyline, a lot of people like Pocatello, but I feel like Bishop Kelly, they used to be the top of that conversation every year, right? It used to be BK, copy, paste, repeat, but they kind of, I think the rise of Middleton and the rise of Emmett in the 4A SIC kind of diluted the Bishop Kelly a little bit. That they had to go into slugfests every week in the 4A SIC more than usual. And but now look out, like that's a huge win by them to win by that much. I mean, Bora didn't beat them that much. And if you want to do the transitive property thing, right? Bora only beat them 21-0, but look what they did. I mean, you just can't take away from it. And Bora, a very good 5A team that people are high on. This Bishop Kelly squad, I think, has taken a step forward that has not been there the last couple years.
Definitely. Hadley Smith, returning quarterback for BK, 9 of 15, 204 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for a 4th touchdown as well. And yeah, for BK, they're still seen as the giant 800-pound gorilla in 4A football. But as Lucas Gebhardt, who wrote the season preview for Bishop Kelly on IdahoSports.com, which, by the way, you can still go look at every team preview for every team around the state. He pointed out that it's actually been a while since BK, got to a championship, won a championship. They've been bounced in the quarterfinals each of the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember that they lost to Century one year, I believe.
Yeah, 2 years ago they lost to Century, and then last year they lost to Pocatello.
Okay, yeah. So it's been a while. Like they played in a state championship 3 or 4 or 5 years ago against Hillcrest, and I think that was the last time. I think Hillcrest ended up winning that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
and I think that was the last time that they've made it that far. So it has been a while. I think people always think, oh, Bishop Kelly wins it every year, but they kind of haven't lately. It hasn't been Bishop Kelly's 4A like it might have been 7-8 years ago.
Definitely. And you mentioned it, the team now that is most poised to unseat Bishop Kelly again for the second year in a row is Emmett. This was another contest we had on IdahoSports.com Friday night. Emmett was hosting Blackfoot in a pretty entertaining 4A ball game. Blackfoot gets the win 49-32. And so for Emmett, the question was, well, they lost all of their offensive playmakers, right? Caden Young, multiple time 4A SIC player of the year, is gone. Are they going to be able to replace that production? I mean, 32 points says, yeah, they're still going to be pretty good on offense. 49 points allowed, even to a good Blackfoot offense, though, is too much.
Yeah. You can't win a lot of games if you've got to score more than 49 points, right, to beat them. And Blackfoot's offense is a juggernaut. I don't know, but outside of Bishop Kelly, if they're going to see an offense like that in the 4A SIC this year, especially from that Blackfoot gets it done in the air. Blackfoot, that's what they want to throw the ball. I think King had like 5-6 touchdowns or something like that all through the air for Blackfoot. So, it's different. And, Blackfoot's a good team. And so I don't think there's anything to be disappointed about, but I think there's definitely lessons to be learned and to figure out what we can do to improve. And I think at the end of the day, we learned that Emmett's going to be okay. I think that they were just kind of, you didn't really hear much about them, right? This offseason. And I don't know if they wanted that. I think they kind of like that. We don't know quite what we are yet. We're going to find out. And then I think they're going to be okay. And again, we've hit on this 100 times that, 16 teams are vying for 24 spots in 4A. So a lot of teams are going to make it. I think Emmett's going to be okay. I think you're going to see him in the postseason. I think that defense will come together and as the season goes along. But man, I tell you, I was impressed. I thought that Emmett that they looked good and that they'll be okay this season. I guess at the end of the day, I think losing all that productivity will not harm them dramatically.
Right. And Blackfoot's kind of the opposite, where they return almost all of their skill guys from a year ago. So it's kind of a tough week one opponent, to be sure. Let's talk about Skyview is kind of the other team that everybody keeps circling as is a team that could unseat Emmett or BK. But, the Hawks are now 0-2, Logan. They lost to Elko in pretty big fashion last week, and we'll talk about Elko coming up. And then this week they played CUNA, another game on IdahoSports.com. Got into a shootout with the Cavemen and lost 48-35. And I think this says more about CUNA than it does Skyview. I think CUNA is going to be decent this year.
I know, but CUNA did great last week. They win again, and I think we are seeing that the 5A SIC is not what people thought at the beginning, and I'm going to stick with it. I mean, we'll get to it as we talk about other games, but I think CUNA is going to be in the thick of it. I mean, they're not Rocky Mountain, they're not Mountain View. They're not Meridian. I think those three are on a different level. I think those three are by and far the best, but the middle of the pack is still really good, and CUNA is in that mix. They're not at the bottom. They are squarely in the mix. The way they can throw the ball, they are going to be in games when they can go deep like they can.
Yeah, Cole Lukanga, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the state. He's the CUNA quarterback. He might be the best quarterback in the SIC. I can't say that for sure. I don't, I don't study the tape and watch all 13 quarterbacks, but I know he's really good. Lukanga completed 13 of 17 for 349 yards and 3 touchdowns in that win over Skyview.
What is that? 13 passes for 300 yards. I tell you, they're going to go deep. Like they go deep and it works. And I think Tegan Sweeney at Rocky Mountain is really good too. But those two right there, it's like between the two of them, who's the best? I don't know. Flip a coin. It'd be fun to see those two in a shootout game.
Yes, and on the other side, right, Max Cutforth for Skyview was pretty well lauded for his quarterback play as well. And again, for the Hawks, they've given up 40+ points 2 weeks in a row. Got to get that defense tightened up a little bit. Yeah. Let's stay in the 5A SIC, where it was really kind of like a 4A SIC game. Middleton was playing Nampa, and just like every other classic Middleton SIC game from the past couple of years, it was tight. It was high scoring. Middleton wins 36-34. Nampa scores with just over 2 minutes to play.
2 minutes to go, right?
Yeah, 2:18 on the clock. Daniel Carrillo scores on an 11-yard run. Nampa's got to go for 2 to try and force the tie. Can't get it. From there, Middleton runs out the clock, 36-34. Just another classic Middleton Nampa game, right?
No, those two don't play blowouts. It will come down to the last minute between those two every time. It just does. And I don't know what it is about Middleton that attracts these close games. I mean, they got beat pretty good by Rocky Mountain, but they just always seem to just it's never going to be not dramatic when it comes to a finish for Middleton. And that one right there was, and you know what I think was impressive to see was Decker Hagler, the new quarterback. I thought he really struggled in that game against Rocky Mountain. Again, Rocky Mountain's defense, phenomenal. We saw what they did, and we talk about that to Coeur d'Alene this week. They shut them down too. So I think you look at Middleton and say, you know what? Maybe we're okay. Like we were on par with the Coeur d'Alene, so to say, with transitive property. But Decker Hagler threw for 262 yards in this game and 4 touchdowns. So maybe Middleton's passing. Maybe it was more. We learned more in week 2. So maybe we say maybe that was more Rocky Mountain's defense was just that good than it was Middleton's offense wasn't, because they come out and they score a lot of points this week. And so I think, Brandon, I look at the 5A SIC standings, right? I look at the teams. I look at the conference standings, right? They're broken up into 2 divisions, the Foothills and the River. And I just don't see a world where Middleton doesn't finish 3rd, to be honest, right now. I'm going to say it. Like, they got picked last, but I think they're better than Timberline. I think they're better than Centennial, and I think they're better than Capital right now from what we've seen. From what we've seen from those 3 teams to start off the year, I think Middleton has shown me more than those 3. And you know what? A 3rd place finish really puts you square in the middle of playoff conversation for their first year. That's just my point of view with it. Same thing with CUNA. I think they're going to be knocking on the door around that 3rd. Right now, they sit at that. I feel like that side of it is tougher this year from what we've seen. That River division, right? They have Boise, Bora, CUNA, Owyhee, Eagle, Mountain View. I just think it's more, I guess I say tougher. I guess I mean like more up in the air, right? I think that any of these teams, there's a lot of teams in that division that could make a run for it. And the other side, I think it's the top 2 and then Middleton, and the rest, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a hierarchy for sure right now of a top 3 of Rocky Mountain, Meridian, Mountain View. I think that's pretty clear. Meridian beats Mountain View 13-7 Friday night. All the scoring was done pretty much in the first half, and then it was just a slugfest the rest of the way. Rocky Mountain gets a non-conference win over Coeur d'Alene, 23-7, so they're 2-0. And so the thing is, with these 2 divisions, it's certainly looking like Rocky Mountain, Mountain View again in the SIC championship game, although Meridian may be the second best team, but they're in the same division as Rocky Mountain. When they set these up, I think subconsciously everybody said, well, Rocky Mountain and Mountain View have been the 2 big dogs since they opened.
Those 2.
Yes, since they both opened, because they're schools, right? They haven't been open that long compared to some of the others. And I think that's what they did. But I think we're seeing now that, maybe Meridian is really the second best team.
I think Meridian has taken the torch right now from Mountain View. I mean, they beat them last year in the playoffs, and then they beat them to start this year. I think that torch is passed, right? I think it's Meridian I think it's Rocky Mountain and Meridian. It used to be Rocky Mountain, Mountain View, and I think it's Rocky Mountain, Meridian. And those 2 play in October, October 7th, which I think is probably the de facto conference championship game. It's just gonna come in the regular season. It's not going to come in the actual championship game. So,
and it makes a difference because the 2 teams that play in the SIC championship game automatically get buys into the quarterfinal round. So last year that was Mountain View and Rocky, whereas Meridian had to play an extra game, and that could very well happen again this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other side. I mean, Mountain View loses that game, but it's not like they got run out of the building, right? It's 13-7. Right. It's a 1-play game essentially, and so I think you're going to see Mountain View come out on top there in that conference. I mean, I don't know though. Like the way Owyhee's been playing, the way that they've done all their other sports, you just never know about them either. The way basketball and baseball did, heck, girls softball team, you just never know about them as well. Can they pop out of nowhere and make a run at it? We'll see when they get deeper into play too. But I think you're going to see Mountain View come out on top there again. But I think clearly that Meridian, it's Meridian and Rocky, and we don't know who's 1 and 2 until those 2 play. That's what I'm going to say. That I think those 2 are 1-1 until somebody beats the other. From the way it looks. So
let's take a peek real quick at the 5A, 4A, 3A schedule for this weekend and highlight some of the intriguing matchups. I think right away what stands out to me is Fruitland, who we talked about, 0-1, dropping that tight game against Emmett, 0-1. And so this is a pair of 0-1 teams, and Fruitland is punching up again, right? They're playing a 4A opponent for the second week in a row. It'll be interesting to see how they do there. We talked about CUNA. They're 2-0. We'll find out how legit they are. They travel to Eagle to play Eagle on Friday night. That's going to be an interesting battle. You've got a Thursday night game. Columbia is going to go all the way up to Rathdrum to play Lakeland, all the way up in North Idaho for a Thursday night game. Lakeland's 2-0. Columbia is 1-0. You've got a battle of 2-0 teams that I don't think people expected to be 2-0, Owyhee and Boise. Those two played in kind of the bottom of the standings.
The last place game last year, and now they're both 2-0.
Right. I didn't want to say last. I was trying to find a nicer way to say last place game, but they were both at the bottom of their respective divisions. Valley View lost a shootout with Twin Falls last week. They're going to go back into District 4 this week. They're going to play Burley. That's a game on IdahoSports.com this Friday night. Valley View at Burley. You'll get a chance to see the Falcons for the first time this year. Capital just got their socks knocked off by Bishop Kelly. They now have to turn around and travel up to Lewiston to play a Bengals team that's favored to win the Inland Empire League up north, but they're 0-1. They lost in the Rocky Mountain Rumble, so that's going to be an interesting battle as well. And then you've got...
Can you watch that? One's on Idaho Sports, I believe.
Correct.
So Capital fans, that game is on Idaho Sports. That's up in Lewiston. So check it out.
Correct. You also have Timberline fans will be able to watch the Wolves this week on IdahoSports.com. They're traveling all the way up to Post Falls to play Friday night against the Trojans. It's an 0-2 Timberline team against an 0-1 Post Falls team. So that game will kick off at, friendly reminder, 8 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time for all those Wolves fans. So if you tune in at 7 and you're like, where's the game at? You're an hour early. It's actually going to be 8 o'clock in Mountain Time. But that's going to be an interesting battle for sure. Timberline at Post Falls. You've got Middleton taking on Skyview. You know, the Hawks are staring down the barrel of an 0-3 start to the year. And then you've also got Homedale in a pretty interesting matchup. I think the Homedale Trojans will host Gooding. Gooding is one of the favorites from District 4. They're 1-0. Homedale is 1-0, and that should be a fantastic matchup as well.
Yeah, I mean, Gooding, I think a lot, and this is where I was probably wrong about Gooding, that I thought, you know, with Coach Anderson gone, I thought that was a big piece missing from them, and then they come out and they just beat the brakes off of Jerome, right? They really stick it to them, and so now I at least me, I'll eat crow on that one and say, oh, maybe Gooding they're still Gooding, right? A lot of the pieces stayed the same, right? And those kids that grew up in that program, and so Gooding, another great field where they park around the field there, and those kids have been sitting on the sidelines since they were little, ready for their chance to play there, and that is a sneakily great game, right there. That Homedale Gooding game should be. I think we'll learn a lot about both teams out of that game than what we've seen from them, from their earlier games that they won handily. I think this will tell us where each team sits in the 3A hierarchy.
Definitely. Let's drop down to 2A football and talk about Marsing going on the road to Orofino to play the Maniacs. First game for Shea McClellan as the head coach at his alma mater. And Marsing delivers a pretty dominant 35-12 victory. One of the four horsemen of Owyhee County. That's what Coach McClellan has kind of dubbed the four main skill players for the Huskies this year. The four horsemen of Owyhee County. Jordan Blaz at quarterback ran for 2 touchdowns. He also threw 2 touchdown passes to Luke Steinmeier and Mason Enixon. Those are also members of the four horsemen. So how about Marcy? 35-12 against an Orofino team that admittedly is down, but still 1-0 start to the year.
It's a win, right? I mean, you got to start somewhere. You beat who's on your schedule. You're 1-0. Confidence, right? You come out, you won a game on the road to start the season. Say, you know what? We can do this. We can beat some teams. So it's a great start. It's a great start. We hope that it continues on for them, right? We hope that they continue to grow from that, and they just play in a brutal conference. And I don't know if there's any, and then that's just the tough thing, that you have Coal Valley Christian, who is extremely good. You have Nampa Christian, who won the league last year. You have New Plymouth, who's always in the mix. And then there's Melba, who, of course, so if we talk about Melba for a little bit, right? They played Elko and they beat them. And they took care of business. And that's an Elko team that just ran a 4A school out of the building. Again, transitive property. If so-and-so beat so-and-so. I saw it one year for college football. I think you could trace back ISU beating Alabama because so-and-so beat so-and-so that beat so-and-so that beat so-and-so, and you could trace it back. And they were like Bengals, national champs. So, obviously you can't. That doesn't really work. But if we do look at it for face value, right? Melba looking pretty good, and they have a big matchup this week. I think it is huge in the 2A standings, as a lot of people don't think. Maybe Westside a little bit lower than where they have been. Of course, they beat Firth handily again, but a big chance for Melba to make a statement against North Fremont this week.
Yes, so Melba defeats Elko 38-26 after Elko had boat raced for a Skyview, as you alluded to. Gabe Schaefer rushed for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns for Melba. And it might be a fast game on Saturday. Melba at North Fremont, 2 teams that love to run the rock. Could be over under 2 hours for the total game time. And in terms of a battle, you mentioned it. It's going to be a great one, and it's going to be live and totally free to watch on IdahoSports.com. What a battle that's going to be. Mustang fans, if you can't make the trip all the way to Ashton, you can tune in on IdahoSports.com on Saturday as they take on North Fremont.
Yeah, great broadcast crew for that game too, with Lauren over there covering. I mean, it's going to be good. Like it's a Saturday afternoon, and you don't have to make the drive. I know it's a long drive. There's not many further places you can get, but if you go east, North Fremont is about it over there, unless you're going down to Bear Lake. So just, if you don't want to make the drive, it will be right here live on IdahoSports.com. So just be sure to check that out, Melba fans.
Definitely. Nampa Christian played Declo, a pretty solid, always competitive Declo team. They lost 36-7. And New Plymouth got a shootout win over a Payette team that made the playoffs last year in 3A, 41-38. I think the Pilgrims are going to be kind of back to, well, I mean, it's not like they weren't good last year. They went 5-3 and missed out on the playoffs because of the stupid Max Preps. I think New Plymouth is going to be a factor in this conference once again as well.
Yeah,
so.
I drove right past it as they were playing on Friday, coming back from Weiser. Their game was still going on. I should have just pulled over because you can see it right from the road and right off 95. You could watch a game. But it looked, it was nice crowd there at Payette. Looked like New Plymouth had brought a lot of people. And from the briefness I saw out there, it looked like a great time for both of those two teams. So, yeah, like you said, hopefully you see. I think it's encouraging to see both teams put up as many points as they did. Right, that maybe Payette a little bit better than they have been. They've been slowly inching better since that year where they scrapped football a couple years ago. Just slowly getting back up and competing with a New Plymouth team that, like you said, I expect to see a little bit more out of them. And the whole conference overall, I think playing these tough out-of-conference games that you're seeing will bolster those Max Preps rankings when the time comes.
Definitely. And then for the 8-man, the 1As, Notice played Kendrick in the 8-man classic, and the Tigers are the defending 1A D2 champs. They shut out Notice 36-0. I thought only allowing 36 points to a pretty explosive Kendrick offense was actually a good win for Notice, even though they didn't win the game. And then Horseshoe Bend and Council are kind of the co-favorites at the 1A D2 level. They both got nice wins to start off their campaign as well. For Horseshoe Bend, it was a conference game over Cascade. They won 66-14. And then you had Council go beat Logos, a 1A D1 school, 40-14. And even Tri-Valley got a 52-18 win over Idaho City. So
that was the one, Brandon, that surprised me. I thought Idaho City has been like kind of middle of the road the last couple of years, and Tri-Valley had, again, we're not bad mouthing. They just been down, right? Tri-Valley had not been where they had been in the past, but to do that, I think a lot of people go, "Whoa, okay." So Tri-Valley, you're here now. Well, that's a heck of a win, and so look out for them now. Have they moved into that mix? And we're going to see a nice D1 versus D2 matchup this week. Notice and Council will play each other, and I think that's a good gauge, right, to see where both of those two teams are. And a lot of people like this Council squad. I think they're high on Council right now. And that, if Council can stick with Notice and even beat them, I think that they join. I think D2 is more open than it's ever been. Cary's gone. Water Springs is gone. Kendrick is there, right? And I think but the team that gets to play Kendrick will not be Cary or Water Springs, like it seems like it's always been. That has been one of those. It's been two of those three. And so somebody new will step in and get beat by Kendrick in the state championship. I'm just kidding. But could it be Council? Why not? And we'll see, where they stand, right? They're going to get a direct chance to see, right? Because Kendrick just beat Notice. And so if they can see how they do against Notice, they might have a gauge of how do we look against Kendrick without actually playing Kendrick, right? We can see against a common opponent where we stand against them.
Definitely. And Tri-Valley will get a similar opportunity. They're going to go up to Nez Perce and play Lewis County. Lewis County is in the same conference as Kendrick, so they can use that as kind of a measuring stick. Both of those teams are 1-0. You've got Horseshoe Bend playing Idaho City, so Wildcats in danger of dropping to 0-2. And then Garden Valley will make their season debut as they take on a Rimrock team that lost pretty big to Dietrich last week. So that's kind of what's on the schedule for the 1As in football this week. Let's talk volleyball. Logan, the Cuna Classic was held this past Saturday at Cuna. It's the first in-state, one of a couple, New Plymouth also had the New Plymouth Invitational as well. So a couple of early season volleyball tournaments. A new wrinkle this year, regular season tournament matches won't count towards the standings, won't count towards Max Prep's rankings or anything like that. So we're not putting those results on our site, and they shouldn't be put on Max Prep's. That's going to be a stickier situation, I feel like. But
see how
so you can kind of just
when everybody's got them all in there and they don't count,
right? So it's going to be these weekend tournaments are going to be more of let's get some good competition and see how we stack up. And so a couple of big takeaways. I thought New Plymouth did pretty well at their own tournament. Filer did end up winning that tournament, though. And then at the Cuna Classic, you had 5A schools like Boise and Cuna there, and you had 1A D2 Council there competing as well. Council knocks off the hosts from Cuna. That's a 1A D2 beating a 5A. Yep. And then they got to the 5A. They got to the semifinals of the gold bracket and lost to another 5A school in Post Falls. But a pretty good weekend for the Lumberjacks and Coach Paula Tucker.
You know what? You'll take it. Maybe those games don't count right on the schedule, but they count in all the come out with the polls, right? I think that reflects in the eyes of coaches, right? In that, wow, they went in there and took care of business a bit against some big schools. So may I tell you what? I mean, it's been Council, Horseshoe Bend. That it's the same conversation we had last year, right? That it was those two, and doesn't look any different this year.
Well, and then they play Horseshoe Bend on Monday night and get swept 3-0. So the Mustang, Horseshoe Bend and Council could probably, win.
So they compete, and that's what's crazy, Brandon. Right. So if Council beats 5A schools and then they get swept by Horseshoe Bend, throw Horseshoe Bend in a 5A SIC and let's see where they stick. Right. I mean, I think they'd be right in the middle of it. I think I would love to see that. I want to see them play Timberline, Bora, Capital. Let's make it happen. That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. That would be a lot of fun. That we'll continue to keep an eye on volleyball and what's going on there. Skyview went and played at a tournament in Utah and dropped a couple of matches, but Utah again has like a 3-week head start on Idaho. So,
right.
Not too shocking that Skyview dropped a couple of matches there. Let's talk cross country before we duck out. The first weekend of cross country action was this past weekend. And now we're gearing up for one of the signature early season events. It's in East Idaho. It's the Cardinal Classic, and it's held at Soda Springs. IdahoSports.com is actually going to be broadcasting the varsity races, boys and girls, on Saturday. And there are a couple of teams from District 3 that are going over to compete. Most notably, I would say, are at the 5A level, Centennial and Mountain View. Both will be traveling over to compete. So that'll be a good opportunity for them to run in a different terrain, different elevation.
Yeah. Just go at Soda Springs a little bit higher over there. And so a good chance just for only 2 schools going. But I think next week, do we have more going up? There's also another. We're doing not only this cross country race this week, but we'll have another one next week as well. That one's a Tiger Grizz. And I think you'll see a lot more teams go over for that one next week, and we can hit on that next week. But, a good chance to compete against those East Idaho schools that have been very successful in cross country over the last couple of years.
Definitely. So again, that coverage will be on Saturday on IdahoSports.com. All right. Well, speaking of running, we got to run out the door. I've got more podcasts to record, Logan. So we'll end it there. But a good conversation, and we'll be back to break everything down again for you next week. Again, as a reminder, if you want to see what broadcasts we'll be delivering to you, football, cross country, whatever it is, you can go to the game streams tab on the homepage at IdahoSports.com and see the entire broadcast schedule there. Thanks for tuning into the Treasure Valley Prepcast. For Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on Idaho Sports.